right, hello everybody. My name is Jonathan Rothy, and this is my tool review project. Um, the tool I'm going to be reviewing is Splunk. So Splunk is a security information and event management platform. It's widely used in the security industry to basically collect and analyze logs or machine data in real time. The key features of Splunk are that it ingests logs from a number of different machines if necessary. Those logs can be searched through with search processing language. It also includes dashboards, alerts, and correlation to make it easier to view and catch incidents with your logs that may be coming into the Splunk instance. It's typically used by SOC analysts or Security Operations Center analysts, incident responders, and security engineers, but it is also widely used across the industry. Now, my test bed is going to include two virtual machines. It's going to have a Ubuntu virtual machine with an IP address as pictured there, ending in 10.10. And this is going to be the Splunk indexer and search head. And then I'm going to have a Windows 11 virtual machine, which is my Splunk forwarder. And in other words, that's the source of the logs. That one has an IP address ending in 20, which will be important as I demonstrate the test bed and my test cases. The network is just the VirtualBox host-only network, and then network address translation for internet access. I'm just collecting Windows logs from that Windows 11 machine, but particularly the security and warning or error logs that come from that machine. Now, my test cases are going to be to verify that Splunk is ingesting those Windows logs as expected, so that we should actually see the Windows 11 machine forwarding those logs to the search head that is on the Ubuntu machine, which requires some configuration to get that working. Test case 2 is going to be that we can get a dashboard up and running, which will actually give us a nice organized place to see all of our events that are relevant, like security events or warnings and errors, in one place. And then finally, the last test case is going to be a simulated brute force attack against the Windows machine, which should trigger security events, particularly event ID 4625, which should give us an indication that a brute force attack is happening. And not to spoil too much, but the results here are that Splunk successfully was able to ingest those Windows security events and logs. The dashboards also did provide a good place to immediately see errors, especially those logon errors. And we were able to see the brute force as it took place, which is very useful. So that shows the strengths of Splunk, which is it's real time, it's flexible, it gives good insights. You can have dashboards where you can immediately see security incidents unfolding. It's very good for those SOC analysts and SOC users in your security operations center to keep an eye on. However, there are some shortcomings. So you need to be able to configure Splunk correctly the way that you want and need it so that you can actually get the correct deep insights about what you're looking for. For instance, in our dashboard, if we didn't have that set up correctly, we wouldn't have been able to see the brute force attempt that took place. Also, there is the possibility of false positives, and we discussed that later on with the demo and why sometimes you may have to tune your alerts and tune your dashboards. And also the fact that Splunk is not a free tool. You have to pay for the licensing. You also have to pay for resource usage if you're using their cloud architecture, which most or many businesses would do. So there's a lot to consider there as far as cost considerations as well. So yeah, that is the project, and up next are my demonstrations of the test cases.
Open up the dashboard here. It does run on port 8000 by default. And then over here, I've installed the Splunk Universal Forwarder, which is basically what allows the logs to be forwarded from my Windows 11 machine to my Splunk server here on the Linux Ubuntu server. So I've actually been able to configure that. If you go to the Etsy system local folder, you can choose what logs are ingested and forwarded, and then in the outputs you can choose where they get forwarded to. So I've got my server with the port that I had set up here in my Ubuntu machine, where the default receiving port or listening port is 9997. So now that I've got that all set up, what I'm actually able to do is view all the logs that are coming to my Windows index, which is the index that I've configured them to be forwarded to. That just keeps things nice and organized, so all the logs for Windows are coming to the Windows index. And here we can see I've got some logs from just a few minutes ago. These are just, nothing too crazy here, just informational logs. As you can see, there's not a whole lot going on, but we can always change it up and search for, well, maybe the type is warning. So that narrows it down, and we can see just the logs. There's only 6 of these versus thousands of the others um, that are probably a little more concerning to us if we're looking at, a SIEM tool, security incident event management. We're probably a little more concerned about warning. So these are the ones we'll probably want to take a look at. And we can even set up a dashboard so that these types of logs come directly to us at the dashboard. And that is something that I will hopefully get up and running here as one of my test cases. But for test case number 1, both machines are able to communicate. They are able to communicate the logs between Windows 11, then forwarding those logs over to Ubuntu where they are ingested on the Splunk server, and I'm able to look through my logs and view warning or even error logs and see anything I might want to know about these recent logs from just about 10 minutes ago. It might be something of importance. So that is part 1 of the video, and I'll be right back for part 2 with the rest of my test cases. All right, so this is part 2 of my tool review project, which is a review of the tool Splunk, which I have over here on my Ubuntu virtual machine. Over here, I have my Windows virtual machine, and as you can see, what I've done here is I've entered the incorrect pin too many times. And that's relevant, and we'll get to that in a second. But first of all, I want to go over my test case number 2, which is dashboards. And that is a special feature in Splunk that basically makes log and data aggregation all the more straightforward and easy to use. So when we have a dashboard, we can actually build and create our own customized little space to have all kinds of data show up just the way we want it. We can have custom line charts and graphs and all sorts of stuff. It's actually very straightforward to edit these and make them show up every which way. If we want it to look like this, that's fine. Whatever makes you feel the best about your reporting, and you can add new panels with new sources, new basically strings. Search strings is what we put in there to make these show up the way we want them. And so it's uh, really a pretty simple process to get a dashboard set up. But there is a little bit of know-how involved when you want to search for the right kinds of things. And I won't go too deeply into that. But what I have here is a dashboard that shows Windows logs. It's got the errors, the warnings, the security events, and right here is the failed logon events, which is definitely something we're going to look at, as well as just some general security events listed. And so this is what your security operations center might use. You might have a security analyst whose job it is just to watch this dashboard, which might update every minute or two, and just make sure that, nothing is spiking off the chart. We're not seeing a ton of security events or something show up. We're not seeing a ton of failed logins. And so what I've done here is I've basically simulated a brute force attack. So with this user right here, I've entered, far more than usual, as you can see, no failed logons. And then all of a sudden we have all these spikes. And then this one in particular has 5 failed logons, and that's what caused us to get locked out here. And so on this machine, because it's just one machine, that's probably something of concern and something that we'd want to look more into. But that actually leads into one of the shortcomings of Splunk, which is if you have a dashboard or any kind of alerting system, you can also set up alerts as well, which I have not set up at this point in time. But if you were to set up alerts for maybe every time there's a failed logon, it would only make sense in a very small environment like this one where there's only one user. Because in a large enterprise, if you were getting alerted every time there was a failed logon, you would get something called alert fatigue, where your analysts basically start to ignore the alerts they're getting because they get the same alert for really just an average normal event. So that's something that needs to be considered when deploying Splunk is that you need to tune your alerts and tune your dashboards quite well so that you're only getting the information that matters. You want to filter through the information as best you can to only get the kinds of information that are really relevant to your security team. So that is one of the shortcomings to consider is that it's not just, it's a little complicated actually, and it requires constant maintenance to get that set up correctly. Um, the other thing is that with Splunk, there is a cost. So Splunk is a paid platform, software as a service, and what they offer is usually something in the cloud, something based on processing costs as well as storage costs. And for a large enterprise, if you're having a lot of people searching through your Splunk logs and you're having a lot of storage taking place in the cloud of these many gigabytes or terabytes of logs, that can really add up, and those costs can really start to build over time. So for example, my organization that I work for, they use Splunk, and they uh, they actually have an issue with not paying for enough processing power. So the Splunk searches are very slow. Whenever we have to look for things on Splunk, it can take a long time. And those processing costs can be pretty steep, so some organizations opt to use Splunk locally on their own servers, but there's also licensing fees there. So that is one of the other shortcomings of Splunk, is that it's not a free tool. It is a for-profit company, so you have to pay to use their services, and those costs can definitely add up over time. So that's something that some organizations might be hesitant to do, but it can be a lifesaver. It's absolutely very important to have if you want to keep a good close monitoring on some security logs or any kind of data for that matter. It's a really good data aggregation tool that's very widely used in the security industry, especially in security operations centers, as discussed earlier. So yeah, that's my tool review project. Hope you enjoyed and have a great day.